So I want to finish my true story continuation from yesterday. In the last video, I spoke about how I was around my 30th birthday, which was 9 years ago, how I decided to own and face my abilities and my gifts in order to master myself, and how I felt that I was ready around that time. And I spoke about in the other video about how that began and how that started off. Now, for the sake of time, I'm going to jump around within the story because the story is very intricate and it's very detailed. And I was up for 7 days, going through various spirit phenomena and just, things of that nature. So I'm not going to be able to cover everything within these 10-minute videos. It would take a long time. But as I said, I am working on a book that will go into full details on mimicry intelligence, the oversoul path that I'm walking, and that experience will be in full detail. But yeah, for the sake of time, I'm going to jump around. So when this whole experience at first started in Baltimore. I was living in Baltimore at the time, and when I had chose to face my gifts and when everything started, it started in Baltimore. The next day, my brother had decided to take me to DC because it got a bit too much for me with what I was dealing with, a bit in the sense that I was realizing that there was really no boundaries, or boundaries were not being my boundaries were not being respected at the time. So there were many beings that were trying to inhabit my body, like they would just come and stand in my body or sit in my body. And what was occurring was me feeling all of the vibration of these different beings, the frequency of the density, rather, it was suffocating at times. So, because I was green and I was naive and I didn't have as much knowledge as I have now, when I went through that experience, it was a full blown experience. And, I was a bit panicky, a little bit, but my mental state was still intact. And when I look back on it, I realized obviously my higher self and my oversoul was in control of that whole process. And of course, I realized later on that it was something that I was supposed to go through. But at the time, I was just a bit green and panicky because it was just a lot at the time. So my brother had took me to DC. He figured if I go and stay with our parents for a bit, maybe I could recalibrate or something like that. But so he took me down there the next day in the evening. And I just remember when we were driving and I was sitting in the passenger seat, it was like many beings would literally be if we were on a highway, there would be beings that would be literally flying next to the car, or however fast they were moving, they was moving, with that car. And they would just really come through the car and they would sit in my body and, and it would be a bit suffocating, having multiple beings coming and sitting in my body. The density of it, I could feel everything. The density, I was heightened. So not only could I see 100%, but I could feel. So I could feel the vibrations, or their density. Having all of these foreign, energies in you. So that was that, and we had got to DC that night, and I just remember still seeing the activity in my parents' house, and my father was sleeping, and I saw this woman that was standing over him while he was sleeping. And I later realized that she was implanting things in his dream state while he was in his dream state. So that was a lot. So the next day, I didn't go to sleep, and I just I just went through it. It was nothing else that I could do besides just try to ride it out or see how I could ride it out. But what was happening was, well, the next day, when I went outside, I encountered a lot of interdimensional beings. So when I was in Baltimore, the only beings that I saw were beings that were like ancestral beings, beings that still had a form like you and I, but they just had their energetic form, but they still looked like you and I. Now they could disfigure themselves or distort or contort themselves in order to maybe like instill fear or something like that. That was just a tactic. But my experience when I was in Baltimore was it was several disembodied spirits that that I was encountering, that I was operating with. But when I went to DC and I went into that area that my brother had took me to, it was all interdimensional beings. And for anyone that would have saw these beings, they would say that they were the ET or extraterrestrial and whatnot. And I just call them interdimensional beings because I know better now, And so that's basically what I saw. And it was so many of them. It was like blatant and they were like everywhere. But and not only just that, like everyone kept coming to me. Like and the reason why I was up for 7 days is because the spirit activity was intense in the sense that my mental energy and my faculties my vibration was already intense. I was already operating at a high vibration myself, but then encountering all of these beings where it was like they had their own agenda, or something like the ones that would come and try to sit in your body like as if they wanted to overtake you. Or then you had the ones that everyone would just come up to me and they would start scanning my retinas. Like I would literally have staring contests. And it wasn't even really a contest, but it felt like that at times because I would literally have beings come up to me and just like close proximity to my face and just stare, in my eyes. But you could tell they were scanning, your eyes, like scanning your retinas. At the time I didn't know what they were looking for, but then later it's been 9 years since this happened. So, I have the awareness I've already sensed. And to be honest, I found out the truth about that whole situation within this year. To be honest, I just found out the truth about that 8 years later. So imagine, after going through everything. So, which I'm glad that it all came full circle for me to have that understanding. But at the same time, so that was what I was dealing with at the time. There was beings that would come and just, word was out that this being could see us, and then I was emanating a light, but I wasn't aware of that at the time. I wasn't aware that I was emanating a light that they could see that, oh, this being is on. So it was attracting all of these different beings. It didn't matter where I was. I could be in the bathroom somewhere. It didn't matter what location I was. Like they would just all come through and they just had to see this anomaly. I was like an anomaly because, it was like who sanctioned this person, like, so, and you had the neutral beings. There was a lot of neutral beings too, that just seemed to be observing, or whether they were recording or whatnot. And there was some beings that I saw that was like Cyclops beings. There were beings that I saw that looked like Transformer beings, like literally like the Transformer movie. There were beings that were like as tall as the sky, which I had called them sky beings.